Good morning, everyone. I was just running around today. It's Monday, starting the week off. Busy weekend. Had a lot going on. Um, and I was just kind of thinking about a few things this morning as I was doing my chores. You can see I'm just sort of in my hoodie, low key informal conversation here. And uh, I know it's a lot. There's a lot going on right now. It's exhausting. I'm talking to people all the time out there, and people are just so burnt out, which is a feeling that the people are just feeling across the spectrum. I don't think it's a particularly, liberal slash Republican, however you want to phrase it, kind of thing. And it's just people are exhausted. There's so much going on just in our day to day lives. Challenging economy, trying to make sure we're paying for all our bills and things. I know for me, making sure my rent and bills are paid has been pretty stressful these past couple of months. And on top of that, all this stuff going on in politics is just driving people crazy. And so I was just kind of thinking about this, about how there actually is a lot of excitement right now that you could sort of excitement for the future, I guess you could say, which I realize is a weird thing to say given what's going on with all the craziness right now. But hear me out for a second. So I think, and I've always said this, I think that ultimately at the end of the day, people, just normal folks, not folks that are trying to, rage bait or get clicks for money or whatever, just normal folks that are going about their day, aren't checking social media all the time, or maybe, looking at one or two kind of news channels here and there just to kind of get a gauge on what's going on. Normal folks, we're just kind of looking for three things. The first is that they want to know that their family and themselves are going to be safe and healthy, that they can take care of their family, and that things are going to be all right. The second is that people, I think, generally want to do meaningful work that's going to, again, take care of themselves and their family, but also is going to provide some meaning to what they're doing. And that can be anything from, a bricklayer to a doctor, like just people that are working and creating something that they feel gives them meaning in their purpose in life, if you want to call it that. And then the third is like they ultimately just want to be left the fuck alone. I think that's a very American ideal that Americans just want to be left alone to go and do their thing and live their life. And I think that third one is where we're running into a lot of friction right now, because the idea of being left alone has sort of been co-opted by some folks in order to create friction, and realizing, like, when I say left alone, I mean you go and do you, and you live the life that you think is going to be meaningful for you over the course of your 75 or 80 years or whatever. Now, of course, part of that means that you have to give the space and the freedom for other people to do that. And that obviously you living your life cannot involve harming other people. So, serial killers, going out and living their best life, maybe not what we want for society here, but that's obviously a silly example. But those are kind of the three things that I think most people fall into. And I've always been a big proponent of solutions. Like, I'm not interested in talking about like nonsense and trying to cover every piece of noise. You may have noticed that, like, I don't post on this channel about everything happening in society because, well, one, I'm not a journalist. And two, part of my responsibility is to kind of fully understand what is going on, or at least as much as I can, so that I can start working towards meaningful solutions. And so I have been sitting here, and like I said, this morning I was just kind of putzing around the house, doing things, feeding my cat and everything. And I just sort of started to kind of get excited about the opportunities to break out of politics as normal. I think a lot of folks are rightfully just frustrated with our leadership in Washington, whether it's Republican or Democrat or whatever, because ultimately they just keep lying to us. They get us, riled up so that we go and vote for them, and then when they're in power, they don't do the things that we need them to do because they're, beholden to corporate interests, or they of themselves are greedy and selfish, and they're trying to, make a buck at our expense, or whatever the case may be. But we have an opportunity now to not do that. We have an opportunity to literally break both the Republican and the Democratic parties and get them out of their bad, their lesser angels, their bad behavior here. And I think we can do that by getting excited about a vision for a future that, you're going to want to live in a world. And so I was thinking about, all these opportunities that are coming down, and, we can talk about the specifics in a future video of, this policy or that policy. That's not really the point of what I'm getting at, but, that there is a way, there is a path that we can walk down that will make America the economic and cultural leader, the force for the next 100 years in progress. There is an avenue for us to do that, and we can do it without cruelty and lies and bullying, and we can do it by building up partnerships that will last for generations. And that opportunity is really special. And to be honest, it doesn't come along very often. And in fact, this might be one of those moments that doesn't or hasn't existed in history before. And so there is a chance here for us to, for example, create an America where the opportunity to be successful is boundless, and yet nobody is poor or broken at the bottom. There is an opportunity for us to create a healthcare system that focuses on preventing illness, and then when people get sick, getting them as healthy as possible, as quickly as possible, and giving them the tools and the opportunities to then leave and be successful in their rehabilitation or their recovery, whatever that happens to be. And unfortunately, if it gets to a point where recovery isn't an option, where we can move them into that last stage of life in a kind and compassionate way. And none of those things are going to cost more money than what we're currently spending. We can create an educational system that gets everybody who wants to go to college, for example, or a vocational training school, the ability to do that. And then that gives them the opportunity to move up in the economic, ladder, as it were, to have those chances to move them and their family into a better position. We can do all of those. Those are all policy decisions that we can decide to do. And the reality is the reason we're here, the greed and the selfishness and, all of the corruption that has plagued our leadership, is because we've allowed it. We as the people have allowed it. And we've allowed it because we are bouncing back and forth against each other, whether, again, Democrat, Republican, left, right, whatever, like these little categories that we throw ourselves in. That's kind of how they want it, right? If we're busy arguing amongst each other about issues that generally most people agree on anyway, maybe not about like every single detail, but the vast majority of Americans agree on just about every issue in the broad strokes, the longer we're arguing, the more that those folks can restructure the deck to benefit them. And we've got an opportunity to change that right now. And that's really exciting. Like, we can go in and rework the American government, the American system, to provide the benefits for us, like the workers, the people that are building this. And again, I know this is going to start to this is triggering some libertarians and Republicans' brains where they're like, oh, government oversight, government control, or whatever. But that's not what I'm saying, dude. I'm not the biggest government person, but I do acknowledge that there is a role that the government can play in providing infrastructure and a bulwark against, for example, corporations. Like, the only power that's capable of pushing back against some of these corporations is a government. That's just the reality of it. The free market is not going to allow that, because they can control all the elements of the free market to get the result that they want. You need a government that can push back against that. But then you also need the space to just be be a person, right? Where the government's not constantly hanging over your head. So, like, imagine, for example, if we created an equitable tax system that required normal folks maybe 30 minutes a year, maybe an hour to go through and double check their taxes and make sure that everything's good to go. And then they just send that in the IRS and they're done. Like, we can do that. Imagine a healthcare system where you can go to any doctor that you want and get the services you want, and you can walk out the door with no bill. Like, we can do that. We can create clean air and clean water the way it's supposed to be, the way our beautiful country deserves. Our country is glorious, and I don't want to see it fall apart. We can create a police force, a law enforcement force nationally. And I'm not saying like create a national department, but I'm saying support nationally these things where police officers are highly trained, highly skilled, and well compensated. And in addition, they have access to, therapists or psychologists or behavioral specialists that are on duty with dispatchers, so that when some of these challenging situations occur, the police officers feel like they have support, somebody they can ask, somebody they can, a resource they can utilize to help them with some of these challenging situations. Like, we can do all that, right? Like, those are all things that we can do. This is not a money issue. This is a priority issue. And we haven't spent this on we haven't prioritized this spending because there's a lot of rich people who don't want us to do this. There are wealthy, powerful people who are not interested in an actual free market, because a free market provides avenues of challenge to them. And more importantly, that free market potentially it's not predictable for them, right? So they don't want a true free market. And I think we can create a free market that is guided by the principles and values that Americans share. I do not think that is I don't think that's what's the right word for it? I don't think it's a controversial idea that we can create one of the strongest economies in the world, and we can make sure that economy works for all of us, all people, all Americans. And I don't think that's a controversial opinion, because that's what we did in the 50s and 60s. That's what we did after World War II. We had some of the largest investment in our infrastructure, in our people, in our education, in our healthcare that we'd ever seen in any country, ever. And that allowed an entire generation, the baby boomers, and then also Gen X in many respects, that allowed them to see just an absolute level of opportunity, progress, and sort of economic, growth that no generation had ever seen, ever in the history of the country. Like, we can do all those things, and that's a really exciting thing to think about. That doesn't mean there's going to be headwinds, and doesn't mean there's going to be plenty of people pushing against it, right? But when we start talking about these subjects, I want you asking yourself as they come up, stop asking, hey, is this person a liberal or conservative? And then using that as your defining, metric on if you like them or trust them or whatever. But start asking yourself, what do you want to do on this thing? So every time somebody talks about, healthcare, if your natural instinct is to jump to, well, that's socialist. Okay, then what? Just saying that doesn't mean anything. First of all, are you even sure if it is socialist? And then secondly, even if it is theoretically, but just for the sake of the conversation here, does that statement get you any closer to an actual solution to this problem? And I think that's where things start to really break down. Those are, I refer to them, I'm sure there's an actual, academic term, but I refer to them as dead statements. It's a statement that just kills the conversation. It doesn't add anything to it. So instead of being like, oh, that's this or that or whatever, ask, what is the goal you're trying to achieve? If the goal we're all trying to achieve is make sure that everybody has access to healthcare so that nobody goes broke or nobody ends up sick and dying when they don't need to, when we can be providing them support, like, that's my goal. If that sounds good to you, let's have a conversation about it. We can figure out the details on how to implement that. If your goal is to make sure that everybody in this country has access to a top tier education, because without it, we are not going to be competitive with the rest of the world. This is a really important point that I think a lot of people don't focus on. But since World War II, America has had the benefit of being able to be the cultural and economic center of the new developing world, right? If that falls apart, or if we end up losing a lot of our relationships and our partnerships and our economic uh, trade deals and whatnot, and those all fall apart, there is a very strong chance that America will not be sitting in that position. And once you're not sitting in that position, for example, let's say the global reserve currency is no longer the dollar, we lose a tremendous amount of privilege. Yes, privilege that was given to us that we didn't have to do anything for. Yeah, we developed it, we earned it, quote unquote, by the decisions we made after World War II. However, it's been a long time since World War II, and we have systematically removed a lot of that infrastructure support, the educational support. And at some point, we see it time and time again. Rome falls, right? Like there are many ways in which we could lose many of the privileges that we have. English being the primary language of business. If that becomes Chinese, let's just say, for this example, then that's going to make it very, very difficult for a lot of small businesses here in America to begin to enter into the market, because whereas the rest of the world was sort of moving itself, molding itself around American culture and English as a language, if they start moving themselves towards Chinese culture and the Chinese language, Mandarin or Cantonese or whatever it happens to be, then that means that we as Americans are going to have to start molding ourselves in that vein, which is a experience, an effort that many of us have never had to do before. And I'm not saying it's necessarily bad that we have to learn, other cultures or whatever, but it is extra energy and effort that we didn't have to do before. So we had a benefit of that happening by the nature of the world kind of moving itself towards Americans. And I see a lot of people, on the right banging on Hollywood about Hollywood's blah, 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 and whatever. Like, Hollywood has been one of the, if not the primary drivers in moving American culture across the world. So you can complain about Hollywood all you want, and trust me, you want to have a conversation about movies these days, I'm happy to have that. I'm in the video game industry. I'm talking about entertainment content all the time. But the fact remains is that Hollywood is probably the primary driver for our culture going throughout the world, and people just understanding American catchphrases and all those kind of things, American characters. That could potentially be gone. And if that's the case, then our ability to sell products is going to be significantly harder, because the rest of the world is just going to be less interested in the intellectual property that America is creating. So this is an opportunity for us to seize these reins and be like, hey, America is a cultural powerhouse that's creating tons of great products, which I believe, again, even ripping on Hollywood, I think there's a lot of great movies coming out, a lot of great games coming out, books, music, so on. But this really gives us an opportunity to do that. And I think that we can come together and focus on the end goals of things and where we want to get to. So, for example, I think it should be very easy to own a business. And I also think that when you're a small business on the lower end, getting started and working your way up, I think we should have a serious conversation about lowering the federal tax burden for small businesses, for example. So instead of it being, I'm just throwing numbers here. Again, we can talk about details, but instead of it being, a 25% tax rate, we could make it a 10% tax rate, right? We can do the same with our personal income taxes. Like, I think that we should have a zero taxes on any dollar earned below the poverty line. And that applies to everybody. So we pay no taxes below the poverty line. And then after that, it begins to ramp up. And then those that are in the upper echelon end up paying more taxes. And the reason I say that is because they're using more resources, and they're also building off of structures that we have put into place, right? Like, the American people have invested tens of trillions of dollars over the past 50, 60, 70 years to build out the systems that would allow something like an Amazon or a Twitter or whatever to exist. Um, Facebook would not exist without the amount of money and effort that society has put into these systems so that something like Facebook could exist. And so if you're going to come into the workshop and use the tools of America, then yeah, you should be repairing and replacing those tools. I don't think that's an unfair thing. If somebody came into your garage and asked to use, your angle grinder, and they were using it, day in and day out, and they ended up wearing it down, like it would not be an unfair. Sorry, my hair is crazy today. It would not be an unfair ask for them to pay into keeping that in place. I think these are all reasonable things, and I'm a big fan of aligned incentives. I think whatever you're doing, community support, small businesses, large businesses, whatever, playing video games with a group, like if you can align everybody so that your goals are all aligned. Now that doesn't mean that everybody's going to agree on everything all the time. That's not the point. But at the end of the day, you can be like, hey, is this going to help me get to this place, right? So for example, if we can create a system that allows small businesses to grow and become large businesses, and then when they get there, they start reinvesting some of that money, again, through taxes, because that's the easiest way to navigate how we reinvest into society, then they can help bring up the next group and help support the systems that allowed them to get into place so that they could even exist. And again, back to my first comment, you got to remember there's a lot of wealthy, powerful people that don't want that, right? They want to get to the top. And then when they're at the top, they will move the chairs around. So not everybody has a seat anymore because it benefits them. And frankly, I think it's time. I'm done with that. We're not doing that anymore. What we are going to do is provide benefits and opportunities for everybody. And again, before people jump on me, no, having multi-billion-dollar companies that make lots of profit have to pay a little bit more money is not the equivalent of what's going on at the individual level. Large corporations that are making tons of profit and are able to be keeping people employed, like that's awesome, and we should support that. And as they generate that profit by using the tools and systems that are in place here in America, then they pay into reinvesting in the rest of it so we can keep the train going. Now we have aligned incentives. Everybody is aligned together so that their businesses are successful. And when their businesses are successful, they're reinvesting back into society, which allows us to build more infrastructure. It allows us to educate our people. It allows us to provide healthcare for workers so that, again, they can go back into the corporate world. I'm just using corporations as an example. There's others that you can use, but they can go into the corporate world, and now everybody benefits again because now all these corporations have highly trained, competent people that they can begin to move on to whatever their next product is or their next stage. And then hopefully small businesses will also pop out of that will then grow through a system that it incentivizes their growth and their ability to be successful. So that's just an example. And then lastly, I know I've been talking for a while here. A lot of people that are feeling burnt out and tired. This is sort of my last thing is I want you to focus on what you care about. And I mean this in a serious way. I don't mean this in a trying to beat somebody kind of way. Sorry. I mean this in the kind of way where it's like, what's important to you? Is it your family? Is it, maybe it's your job. Maybe it's creating art. Maybe it's learning a new instrument, whatever it is. Focus on the things and the people that you care about and how you can make life better for them. And I think when you look at it that way, it's going to change things because unfortunately, I think a lot of people right now are so focused on kind of defending themselves and their ideas and their lifestyle that they're ignoring what their friends and their family are telling them. And if somebody in your friend group or your family group is telling you that they need something, or what's going on with a lot of folks that they're scared, I would encourage you to listen to them and find out why they're saying the things. You don't have to agree with them, but I think you find if you actually sit down and listen to them, you'll realize that you are surrounded by a lot of smart, competent, caring people, and they're just trying to tell you that they're a little bit, they're trying to tell you what they need. So maybe listen a little bit. And then the next thing is, when you're doing that, when you're spending time thinking about the activities and the people that you care about, start pointing yourself towards that positive goal and start taking positive steps towards that. And positivity, or sometimes like constructive goal making, if you want to call it that, it requires you to constantly be asking yourself, why am I doing this? So make sure that you're doing this because it's something that you feel like you want to do. It's going to benefit you. And I don't mean like in a transactional, kind of way. I mean, is this something that you've always wanted to do? Is this something that's going to make you a better person? Is it going to make you more knowledgeable? Is it going to make you more caring? Is it going to introduce you to new people? Whatever the thing is. Maybe it's going to set you off in a better health direction or a better financial direction. Those are all good. But point yourself in that positive goal direction and then start taking little steps to move there. And if you start creating this little bubble around yourself of positivity and progress, then over time, you're going to start to notice that you're actually making just yourself. You don't have to explain it to anybody. You don't have to post it on social media. And in fact, a big part of this would probably be just getting off of social media in general. Stop doom scrolling, stop getting on Twitter, stop getting on, TikTok or whatever, and just go out and start doing some other things. Try to have a day without a phone. I mean, can you imagine that? Like, trust me, if you can start to do these a little bit here and there, I think you'll find there's benefits that you'll begin to notice, but it's hard. But that's just a little side thing. But once you start building out your little sphere around yourself of positivity, you'll start to notice that other people will begin to kind of gravitate towards that. They'll begin to gravitate towards you. And then when you feel like you're in an okay spot, start to support those folks. It can be small things like just being like, look at you, man, you're doing great. Maybe someone's been going to the gym. Maybe they're 300 pounds and they've been going to the gym and they lost 10 pounds. And you're like, well, 10 pounds out of 300, that's nothing, right? But like that person's going and doing the work. And step by step, if they keep at it, they're going to get to wherever they want to be. And in this case, I was just using weight loss, but it could be any number of things, right? So find the place that you want to be and start working towards it. And then as other people begin to start thinking about positive things, support them as well. And you'll find that sphere, that bubble will begin to get bigger and bigger. And more people will begin to enter it. And they'll begin to enter your life in a positive way. And if the people around you are not supporting you, if they are not positive and helping you out, then maybe it's time to start spending a little less time with them. You don't have to start fights. You don't even have to defend yourself. Just let folks know you're like, hey, I've got this on my schedule. This is important to me. I'm going to go to it. And if they don't see why it's important to you, or they're making fun of you or whatever, for whatever reason, let them do it. Doesn't matter. You've got things to do, right? We start doing that. The next 5-10 years of our individual lives could actually be really, really special. And if we start doing that together, we can start building an America that is going to lead both culturally and economically in a positive way for the next 50 to 100 years. And when you start doing that, now you're talking about generational positive change. And that's pretty exciting. So thank you all for watching. I know this has been kind of a longer one. This is just a little bit of a rant. Again, this was unscripted. I was just kind of thinking about things as I was walking around the house today, kind of cleaning up. And I really am excited for a lot of the positive change that we can bring together. So if you're interested in joining me, whether it's through the campaign or just, reaching out and saying, hey, I really appreciate you. Really grateful for everybody watching the videos. Reminder, you can follow me at Volpe for America on pretty much all the social medias. And if you want to give it a like and a share, I'd appreciate that as well. But otherwise, I hope you're all doing well. I look forward to seeing you around, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care.